Thank you very much for sharing that with us. But I would just like to ask, or probably a comment and a question within the comment is,
Uh-huh.
all right, we know that we learned that the people who hold on to the Pocomia was the lower classes. They were immigrants or children, they probably the first generation of the immigrant population that came. But what you would say today, now that we are citizens of this country, uh, let's say, economic situation a little more manageable than it was in the earlier 20th century. So what would you say would be the attitude, the religiosity of you that let me talk about the Port of Limon where you are working and what you observe. What would be the religiosity of the younger generation versus the older generation? If you see any difference in terms of that morality that you were speaking about and that strong conviction in God, or any other way that they define that almighty one.
Well, I see in our churches we have a good number. I don't know if it's a great number, but it's a good number of and in our society, not just the church, a good number of young professionals. And I believe, obviously, this is the direct result of the sacrifices of the grandparent and great grandparent. There is no question about that. And one other thing that is very important. This is so because they knew that the solution was education, and they grappled that. What's the word is they stapled that in our heads, whether we wanted it or not. And when the opportunities opened for many of them to get an education, they did not hesitate. They went to night school and they graduated, they got their degree, they got their job, and many of them are retired now. So that is important. That is very important. And for those who went back to school, adults who already had their children, went back to school and got their degree. These were people who were formally connected to our churches or informally connected. In other words, though they were not like up in the church, as we say, they had a belief. And so it is their conviction that they were able to make it as a result of the blessings of God upon their lives. I mean, they would not hesitate to say that. That's that generation, our parents and some of our grandparents. Now, I think it's slightly different. I think it is slightly different with our younger adults. We have a significant amount of young adults who are active members of our various churches, Seventh-day Adventists and Baptists and Methodists and Episcopalian. They're active members, meaning with that they attend church regularly, but they are not actively involved in the ministries of the church. So it's like the conviction is there, the relationship is there, but the active participation in order to advance, let's say, the plans and programs of the church, that's absent. And one could what's the word now? I'm missing a word here. One could explain that, justify that by saying that these are professionals and they have a work schedule to comply, etc., etc., etc. So they don't have any time to be involved in in church work per se, but on Sunday they have some time to go sit down 1 hour and hear a sermon and go home. All right. So I believe our as I have noticed, our society is so strongly religious, right? If it's even a formality, it's there. It's there. All right. But on the other hand, many of our young people have taken for our young professionals have taken for granted that what we have, you know, it didn't cost somebody else. So I think there is a disconnect. And uh the for example, in the Jewish culture, biblical culture and tradition, in the psalm, over and over and over, the psalmist would say, tell this to your children, let them know where you were, let them know you are 400 years down in Egypt, let them know, let them not forget that where they are now was not always the reality. And that is one thing I think that our people are kind of we are kind of weak in that aspect, because it seems to me, I can be totally mistaken, that we are kind of embarrassed to 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 share the experiences, the difficulties that we had to in order to make it where we are today. And I think that's a little deficiency. It's not to what was the word, idolatrar that experience. It's just to know where we were, so that we can value where we are today, with God or without God, however one want to take that. But the fact that where we are today costs something, and it costs somebody. Right? So I think that religious, among the younger professional adults, that religious identity, it's still there, but maybe, just maybe, it's becoming, or has become, or is becoming a formality. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I don't know if Diana have another question before I ask one more, just one more. Diana?
Go ahead.
Eh, in terms, I was wondering if eh, the younger generation probably don't have, well, anyway, it's kind of like a contradiction, because you said that the older folks would send their children to church because of the conviction, but because of their lifestyle, they will not go. But
uh,
I am wondering, this is just for a little discussion. I am wondering if the young people today, like, they are more analytical, they are more confident. I would assume that probably because of that contradiction, among the same members of the church, probably they don't want to get involved, or probably they think it's too many restrictions that don't go with the reality of their everyday life. I don't know. I'm just putting things out there, because
what
sometimes you hear that, oh, it's only the churches are full of, or just a handful of older folks, but the young people not coming. And then the young people, some of them would say, we are not going because they're just judging us. They are not welcoming us, because they are living their lives. So I don't know what you have to say.
well Carmen, I think that used to be, um maybe 2-3 decades ago. It used to be like that, because I think the churches 2-3 decades ago were more conservative than they are today. I'm going to give you an anecdote. When we first came to Limon, and I was over at First Church, Um, one of the first little conflict I had was with baby dedications. And they had this regulation that babies could only be dedicated in the sanctuary on Sunday if their parent were married. But if they were not married, if the child was a bastard, as they said, then the child would have to be dedicated in the church office. And I said, no, it can't be. That's a contradiction, because the married couple could live their lives as they want. They don't even come to church. So how come they have the right to come in church on Sunday, all dressed up, smelling good, looking good, to present their baby just because it was born in wedlock, and the other one out there? No, how do you explain that? How do you justify it? And I said my argument was the child doesn't have to be blamed. We cannot blame the baby for the quote unquote fault or lack of his or her parent. All right. And I told them, I said, listen, I will not do that. I will do no dedication in no church office. If it's even on Wednesday, Wednesday night in the regular service, but it was going to be in the church. And that's what I did. Well, we left there, and that's not an issue of discussion anymore. It's not a discussion because I left a girl that was a full-fledged member, very active in the church, came out pregnant, and her child was presented right in the church on Sunday. And I noticed in many of the other congregations, they are not as closed congregations. They're not as closed as and rigid as they used to be. All right. As a result of that, I'm not saying that people can live their lives as they want and just go and do it. No, it's not. But the churches are, let's say, are a little more lenient, and people are not like so vigilant and so tracking you, trying to see, examining you and see if you are worthy or not worthy, to be or not to be.
Anyway, the church should be open to anyone, because Christ came to die not for if we were good, Christ wouldn't come and die for us. So the church should always be
That's
open
right.
to everyone. But the contradictions of you. One more question. One more question. I just want to ask about the aspect of the ancestors. Right? We already learned that a lot of those things were repressed because of the Christian religion. But the people, probably they are not aware that they are practicing, or say they are calling upon the ancestors. Sometimes I want to give you also an anecdote. Many moons ago, when my son was very, very young, in my first marriage, we were coming from a church, from service, service in Limon, coming back to San Jose, and we had a car accident. My son was very small, very young. And that time, no cellular, nothing like that. And, was through, it wasn't through Surkis, around to Realba side. And we were driving a bigger car, it was in our time, that this was in our time. But normally when we get home, we will call home, right? And my mother told me that she went to bed and she didn't hear me call, but she said her mother, and I did not know my grandmother, because she died when my mother was a teenager. And she said that she dreamt my mother, and my mother said, Lucetta, call Carmen. You understand me? So she was just telling me, I don't think she was giving too much thought about it, but those are like the ancestors. Because I did not
That's right.
know her. She did not my mother did not have the privilege for her mother to see her children because she died when my mother was 12 or something like that. So if you could think, I just give that anecdote to see if that will trigger other examples, like to highlight what is happening among our community, that we don't identify those African remnants of the African religiosity or spirituality.
Spirituality. Um, in when was that? The month of September, I had to go to the hospital to visit a sick. And this person was not a religious practitioner of any type. But she was, formal religion. But she was a person that never missed a setup. And the setups are tied, the way we do it down here, it's tied to African religious ceremony around the dead. So I went and visited with her, talked with her a little bit. She was very ill, and prayed with her and left. The next day, the daughter called me and said, Pastor, I went to saw my mother. She had a different semblance on her face, but she said that she saw her grandmother. This woman died long time ago. And she said that I left and she saw her grandmother, the attitude of her mother changed, the appearance on her face changed, because there was a connection with the ancestor. And I get those stories over and over and over and over. We have things like the tape, as I said. You have things like the garlic over the door, and you have all of those things are connected to what the leftovers of African religious practices that we brought with us from Jamaica, and they came from Africa to Jamaica, etc., etc. So yes, the thing with the ancestor is still very strong, but we are not aware of it. It's like the story they tell about this lady that got married, and when she was going to make a pot roast or something, but the piece of meat could not hold in the pot, so she cut both. No, she cut it could hold in her case, but she cut the two ends and put it in the pot. Her husband was very curious, and he asked her, why did she do that? And she said, I don't know. That's the way my mother did the pot roast all the time. So my man was very curious, and when he got the opportunity, he asked his mother-in-law. She said, I don't know, my mother used to do it that way. So when he saw the grandmother-in-law, he asked her. She said, well, when we got married, we were so poor, and we got this piece of meat, and the only container I had to cook it in was too small, so I had to cut both ends to make it whole, to make it fit. And so that was inherited as a family tradition, and they thought it was that some special secret. It was no secret. The lady was in need. So she used what she had. All right. And so we have inherited a lot of these practices and belief systems that we cannot explain, but we practice them whenever it's necessary. So yes. Now the whole thing with the ancestors, they it's like almost a third generation. You don't become an ancestor as you immediately after death. There is a whole process that makes that person become an ancestor, and then what you call it? What they say, it looking down on you, a guardian.
Yes.
A guardian. Yes.
Wow, what a comprehensive coverage you have done, Reverend Miguel. Thank you so much for this understanding of our spirituality, and just to make other people get into the main basics, what would you say is the assets or the values, the most important values of our spirituality coming from Africa, passing through the slavery system, coming to this new situation as, you know, citizens, and all this process we have gone through?
I think the spirituality is still fundamental to a significant segment of our society. I don't know, as Carmen was suggesting earlier, how long will it last among the young professional, young adult professionals. And now that I'm saying this, maybe those that could be can be viewed from two perspectives. Maybe from the perspective of the young Afro-Costa Rican professional that resides in Le Mans, that has those religious structures readily available to them, and has the motivation of the nuclear family or extended family to continue connected to that religious structure. And so maybe that that practice would be at least perpetuated for a longer period of time in history here in the month. Not so for the young professional Afro-Costa Ricans that lives maybe outside of Le Mans, that does not have that structure readily available. And I have noticed one thing: a good number of younger Afro-Costa Ricans that have to move to San Jose for training for university education. They go to San Jose and there is no connection with churches there, and they don't live out their religious experience because listen, it's happened in my own family with my two grand girls, and they would say, "Ah, boy, es que no es lo mismo como en Limón." So they prefer to not go to church. My own son, they prefer to not go to church in San Jose because it is not the same as Le Mans. So you can see that there is even there is a maybe a religious culture there that is different, and that can that would contribute to discontinue, if you may, that religious practice that for our younger professionals or younger people in general that have to move out of Le Mans for whatever reason. Whereas those here in Le Mans, it's right there available to them. So it's a little more difficult for them to stray away from it, so to speak. But in terms of I believe, as a pastor here in Le Mans, I have a good number of people that does not belong to the church that I pastor, for example. People, Afro-Costa Ricans, who call on me whenever they are in situations. All right. There are people who are professionals in many cases, who has access to financial resources in many cases. But when life's crisis hit, oftentimes it's like the money is not enough, the job is not enough. I need some spiritual what you call it, strength, in order to face this, to live through this particular experience. Just today, a mother called me, professional, and said, "Listen, I have my two children in San Jose who have been affected by COVID. One of them is hospitalized and with pneumonia. So this is risky business. So this is a situation, it's a life situation that is beyond my control. So what do? I hand it over to the higher spirits that that controls that kind of a thing. So I think I'm giving this illustration just to say that at least in the context of Limon, it is still a survival mechanism.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Mike, Reverend.
Mike is all right. Mike is all right. You know me and I know you.
I know. uh, thank you so much. But I mean, the topic is very interesting, and we could go for long, but we know you're busy and stuff like that. But it make me think about the it would be so interesting thinking as an academic to make a study, you know, with the I don't know, I can't think of a word now, but like that what you just explained with how the Afro Limonenses, particularly the Afro Limonense, navigate his spirituality or her spirituality when they move from that space to other spaces. You know, because I can remember when we came up, well, we had but it wasn't the same because in the port it is easy, you just walk to church. When you come to these places, you have to take a transportation, which implies finances, all sort of this. It would be very interesting to make a study on that, that type of spirituality among our people those of us who born and grow here, that version of the spirituality among Afro-Costa Ricans. I mean, very interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I agree. It's interesting, especially because in many cases it's a kind of subconscious thing, brother. It's not readily there. It's like the fuel. It's like the fuel that moves you, but you don't know.
But you don't know exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes, it's very interesting. It would, and another study would be nice to make that comparison between the Afro Limonense and the Afro Meseteño, the Afro in any other part of the province, the country, to see
Yes,
those different, that would be so interesting too, because we navigate the world differently. That is the truth. We navigate it differently.
and that would be I think that would be interesting because for many reasons. It's another world vision. It's another world vision. It's another self-understanding, maybe. Uh, and what are the commonalities?
Yes.
Because I would not be surprised that though in the meseta people are dispersed and has different socializations and so on, that I would not be surprised if the parent or grandparent didn't try because of their own conviction and the depth of that religious thing in them, tried to influence in one way or another the lives of their children or grandchildren. But having all odds against them, what level of efficiency in doing so did they achieve? Maybe not much, but
But
maybe
they
if we
achieve.
are
But
able
they
to, as you said.
sorry
Yeah,
to cut
go
you.
ahead.
No, but
No,
they
go ahead, go
achieve
ahead.
because as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the Anglican Church. I mean, you have a lot of people that migrated from Limon to San Jose, and they go to the Anglican Church, and their children and some of their grandchildren. They know the Anglican Church. I know you have a Baptist church. I can't remember where we used to go when we came up. our, many moons ago. So I think that what you say is still there. Is still there, but it's to see if the ones that born and grow here, if they have that same experience,
Yes,
like
yes,
those of us who
yeah. It's
migrated and looking for that community. Because the church is that
yes,
that thing that
yeah.
make community
That
for
what
us.
that which you said there is so important. When I first came, very important. The difference between those who migrated to San Jose and made San Jose a home, and those who were born in San Jose and the other provinces, the difference between them, because you said something very important there. The church was the community.
Mhm,
It's what gives life meaning,
mhm,
and it provides a foundation on which from which one can operate. And as you said that, I remembered going to the Templo Biblico, coming out of this English speaking church all my life, from
mhm,
Bluefields, and coming to seminary. And somebody said one Sunday afternoon, let's go to church. I had already go to some Spanish church, but I went with them, and I was so grateful, so happy that I did accept to go, because there were a bunch of young black people from all over. Um, the Grays, that's where I met the Grays sisters. Um, and at the Templo Biblical, it was a small gathering. I had a lady playing the piano, and Dr. What's his name? George Taylor
mm,
was the preacher. He was a former professor at the seminary. But that was the place that provided community and
mm.
stability for us. It was an answer to the absence of what we had left.
Right, right.
Right,
But
in
but
this
let's
this
ask
new
let's ask Diana. Diana did not born and grow up in Limon. So Diana, what would be your experience?
That would be good to hear.
Um, it's not that how can I explain it? It's been a good experience with the people here, because maybe it's not a black church, but still in a Baptist church. We share the same values, and but it's true that it's not the same as in Limon, because I have the opportunity to see how a church is run in Limon and in some other countries in the Caribbean, and I can feel something different from which all the experience growing up here in San Jose that I have no clue, and that I only had by watching movies. So this is how I feel that there's something in terms of cultural bonding that give us this, and the ancestors as well, but give us this way to express ourselves in other ways different from the mestizos or the Chinese, that they have their own Protestant church as well. So this is how I perceive. It's the same God. Don't get me wrong, but the way to approach and to receive what she has to give us is different from other kind of cultures.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think, yeah, that's so true, so true. And it's the same God. It's the same God. But the cultural mediation there, I think it's what that
That's right.
determines. I don't know if Carmen remember any setups here in town. I'm coming back to this dead thing again. Setups
Of course,
in Le Mans.
of course.
Um, but when they used to sing,
Mm,
and they used to use this Sankey thing or a hymn book, and somebody read out a line, and the rest answers, and read out a line, and the rest answers. And the same thing in Bluefields, the same thing they do in Bluefields. Lo and behold, when I go to the States and go to a black church, as they are now saying, go to this black church, and the gospel is the same thing. The gospel music. They have the soloist singing, and the choir answering. The solo singing, it's a conversation between the soloist and the choir. And the sermon is the same. The sermon is preached by the minister, and the congregation answers. There is a constant dialogue from beginning to end. And where does that come from? It comes from Africa. And so though we may differ significantly from the practice of the black church in the United States, we have our own expression of the same thing. The only difficulty we have here, well, I shouldn't say the only difficulty, but one of the difficulties we have here is that we have been Christianized by white European missionaries who tried to stifle those expressions in our experience. But that would be similar to what Diana is saying with her experience with the Spanish churches in San Jose.
And that let me just highlight what Quince, because we had a conversation with Quince Duncan, and he said that we should be speaking about Diana, if you help me here, a pueblo Afro, and not like because we have the same practices anywhere we go, because we're coming from one root, which is the African root. So you just have different manifestation
expressions,
depending on where we are, but we are just one people. So that what you said just let me remember what he emphasized in our conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm in good company.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
That's good news. That's good news, sorry. That's good news for me.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So Mike, this is wonderful, and we want to express our gratitude again for sharing your time and your knowledge with us, and we hope that people who listen to this will be motivated to pay a little attention to these little practices that we don't recognize that they are African, so at least
yes
we will contribute to
thank you for the opportunity. Thank both of you, Diana and Carmen. Thank you for the opportunity. I am bird down here in Lemon. Doesn't get much opportunity to do these kind of exercises, and sometimes one becomes lonely because I was trained to think and to analyze opportunities. So I thank you very, very much. I chose not to mention the names of all these African religions and the names of persons, founders, and stuff like that, because that's sometimes very boring. But I hope it was helpful.
Yes, it was.
Hope it was helpful. And any other time for any other activity, if you think I can help, I would be very, very happy to make the effort. So thank you as well.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Somos voces de la historia, sangre, tinta y papel. Somos voces de la historia, mis ancestros, su saber, mis ancestros, su saber, mis ancestros, su saber.